This is the story of MIA, a girl who was not like other children. From the very first day at school, her quiet voice, clumsy movements, and tendency to hide behind books provoked ridicule from her peers. She was only 7 when this nightmare began, a nightmare that would stretch for many years. They nicknamed her Quiet Mouse, Hermit, Weirdo. Words seemed to rain down on her, leaving no chance to hide. It all started with small things, a torn page from a textbook, a misplaced pencil case, mockery of her drawings, which she loved so much. But gradually, the bullying became more brutal. The children, seeing her not as a victim but as an object for entertainment, began to physically harass her. They pushed her in the hallways, took her lunch, called her the most offensive names. MIA tried to talk to the teachers, but they, busy with their own affairs, merely waved her off, saying children will be children and it's your own fault, you need to be more sociable. For MIA, school became a real hell. She feared every bell, every lesson. Her only salvation was books, which she read avidly, immersing herself in other worlds where no one bothered her. At home, she spent all her time in her room, talking to her toys, which became her only friends. Her parents, caught up in the eternal struggle for survival, did not notice the depth of her suffering. They saw only a withdrawn, unsociable daughter, and this only intensified her sense of guilt. Years passed, and the situation only worsened. MIA moved on to middle school, but the bullying did not stop. On the contrary, it became more sophisticated. They began to ignore her, pretend she didn't exist, and then return to taunts and teasing. Every day was an ordeal. She studied poorly, although she was a very smart girl. Fear paralyzed her, preventing her from concentrating. One day, when MIA was already 14, a particularly cruel incident occurred in the schoolyard. A group of older students surrounded her, taking her notebooks and tearing them to pieces. MIA tried to protect her drawings, her dreams, but she was pushed, and she fell into the mud. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the dirt. At that moment, something inside her broke. The world around her lost its color, sounds became muffled. She felt her strength draining away. MIA never came home that day. Her parents, alarmed by her absence, contacted the police. The search began. A few hours later, she was found in the same park where she used to like to walk. She lay unconscious, her small body cold. Doctors diagnosed a deep coma caused by severe stress and exhaustion. The cause of this condition was unclear, but they understood that it was the result of something terrible. Thus began Mia's 13-year winter. Her parents, devastated by grief, did not lose hope. They spent years by her bedside, talking to her, reading her books, holding her hand. But MIA was sleeping. She was sleeping, sheltered from the cruel world that had never been able to accept her. The world around her continued to live. Her parents grew older. The school she so hated had long since ended for her peers. They grew up, started their own lives, created families, achieved success. MIA, however, remained in her quiet, silent world. And then, after 13 years, something incredible happened. One morning, as the sun was already illuminating the room, MIA slowly opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was her mother's face, aged, with deep wrinkles, but still full of tenderness and hope. "MIA, my darling," her mother whispered, her voice trembling with tears. MIA blinked. Her eyes, as blue as ever, slowly scanned the room. Everything was unfamiliar. The furniture had changed, the photos on the walls were new. She tried to speak, but only a faint hoarse sound escaped her throat. Her brain, awakened from such a long sleep, worked slowly, with difficulty. Memories flooded back. School, mockery, pain, dirt, darkness. She remembered that day. The doctors were amazed. Such a long period in a coma and the subsequent awakening was almost a miracle. But for MIA, it was not a miracle, but a return to a reality that had changed beyond recognition. She was 27 years old. She had missed everything: youth, growing up, first loves, starting an independent life. She was like a person lost in time. Her body was young, but her soul was trapped in the past. Rehabilitation was long and difficult. MIA had to relearn how to live. To learn to speak, to walk, to communicate. Every day brought new challenges. Her parents, despite their age, took care of her with the same love. The hardest part was confronting the past. MIA was afraid to even think about school, about the people who had caused her so much pain. She knew that many of them had probably forgotten about her, but for her, everything was as vivid as it had been 13 years ago. One day, when she felt a little stronger, she decided. She found an old photo album with her school pictures. In them, she was still a child, with frightened eyes. Looking at them, she felt a mixture of pity for herself and anger. Anger at those who had broken her childhood. But then, flipping through the pages, she came across a drawing, her own. It was a portrait of her favorite toy, a teddy bear, who was the only one who listened to her. And suddenly, amidst all the darkness, she saw a glimmer of something else. She remembered how much she loved to draw, how she dreamed of becoming an artist. This became her new goal. Returning to the world of art, which had once been her refuge. She started drawing again. Hesitantly at first, then more confidently. Her works were filled with pain, but also with hope. They told the story of her life, a story of struggle, a story of survival. Her paintings began to be exhibited. People were amazed. They saw in her works not only talent but also a deep, poignant meaning. Mia's story, her 13-year coma, her return, all of it became part of her art, giving it a special power. Of course, the scars of the past were still there. Sometimes, in the silence of the night, MIA would wake up from nightmares. But now she had a family that loved her, an art that helped her express everything she had been through. She knew that the trauma had left its mark, but she did not let it break her. She became a strong woman who managed to turn her pain into strength, her silence into a loud voice that spoke of the importance of kindness, empathy, and understanding. MIA, the quiet mouse who spent 13 years in a coma, returned to remind the world that even the most fragile creature can possess inexhaustible spiritual strength. And that it is never too late to start living anew.